Hi, I'm Miles, and today's video is about LUSH ARPs and how I use them in my music. If you're familiar with my music, you might have heard that I'm quite obsessed with arpeggiators. I use them basically all the time. I think in nearly every piece of my music that I released, there is an ARP in. And that's what today's video is about. I want to deep dive a little bit with you in my thought process, how I approach LUSH ARP sounds, not only on the Digi devices. This time I'm using the Mother-32 for that, but you can basically apply this techniques that I'm showing you here to any synthesizer. It just is important that it has an amp ADSR, or basically an envelope ADSR, a filter, of course, an LFO, and then you're basically good to go. Before we jump into that, just a quick reminder to consider a sub to the channel, as it really helps small artists like me. So yeah, big thanks in advance, and let's get right into it. Tip number one is to set up the envelopes correctly. And if we look right into the device, you can see here that, I'm just quickly bring the decay down, that my amp settings are a little bit not kind of like a very short attack and a very short decay, but I like to give the decay some time and also the attack. The reason why I do that is because when you hear, for example, I'm just starting the sequence that I played in the intro again, that it's quite plucky, but I like to have a little bit of room before the sound actually starts. So when I'm dialing back the attack, you can hear that it gets less plucky, and that's something that I really like about ARPs, or basically how I use them, is that they have a little bit of room to breathe before the sound actually starts. It's not such a hard and quick attack, but a little bit of room here. Same goes, by the way, for the decay. If we just go back here, and the decay is very short, doesn't sound so nice because the sound is interrupted quite quickly. And here it's also all about finding the right sweet spot. For me, it's around here, but you could also make it a little shorter. I think, yeah, with all the sounds, it depends a little bit what you want to achieve with that. Talking about envelopes, not only the amp ADSR is important, but also the filter envelope. And the cool thing about the Mother-32 here in particular is that you can use the envelope generator, which is this one here, to also affect the filter and to modulate the filter. And this is really cool because this way, this envelope shape here basically also then opens and closes the filter, and this gives the sound a little bit more of a breathing feeling, maybe you might say. Let me quickly play that for you. So basically this would be the sound without any filter and modulation, because the mod here is at 0. And now listen what happens when I turn this one up. I like it around here. So that this envelope generator basically also opens the filter. And this for me is very important, that before I create my ARPs, I set the envelopes correctly, meaning the amp ADSR and also the filter ADSR. Tip number 2 is to turn the sustain off. The cool thing here again about the Mother-32 is that the sustain has here a switch channel, so you can turn it either on or off. You don't have a knob where you can dial in how much sustain you will you want to have. That's, for example, something you have on the Digitone, but here you don't have that. And for me, ARPs need to have some kind of room to breathe. The notes need to be rather short, so that the whole melody can basically evolve. And you can really hear that if now, for example, this is what it sounds like without sustain, and now let's hear what happens when I turn the sustain on. There's way too much overlap going on with the different notes, and this is something I want to avoid for my ARPs. Sometimes I use the sustain turned on when I want to make some build-ups. So for example, let's say we are now building up something and I'm increasing the decay time anyway. Then I'm turning on the sustain. Yeah, this is something you can use for build-ups. It's very nicely, but in general, I like to have the sustain turned off. Tip number 3 is to define static and adjustable parameters. Now, what does that mean? So basically, when I look at a synth patch, let's just use this one, I have some parameters that are fixed, that I don't touch in my live performance, but others that I continuously change. So for example, static parameters would for me now be the volume, because that's just the volume I'm sending the synth to my DAW to record it. Another static one, for example, for me is resonance. I know a lot of people like to play around with that. For me, I just leave it here at that value. And yeah, this way I have some parameters that are set and don't change in values. Others, however, do change. And there I have, for example, the filter cutoff here. I have basically the whole envelope shape, like the decay time and the attack time. I also like to use here on the Mother-32 the mix knob, which basically controls how much noise gets fed into the sound, and then also the glide amount. And this way you can really bring your ARPs to life, because if you just have let me quickly start that, just something like that, and it keeps playing like that, it's a little boring. So to bring life into that and to add energy and remove energy, all these parameters that I just listed are great to do that. For example, yeah, filter cutoff, I think the most obvious one. But then also noise. Also quite cool to add energy or to take it away in combination with the filter cutoff. Or even make the attack time longer. I can also have some really nice effects on the sound. Makes the sequence sound a little different than before. Decay time, of course. And then go back to the initial state that we had before. And this way you can add a lot of movement and interest to your sound and make your ARPs more unique than just having a basic pattern playing. Another cool way to do that is, for example, not using your hands, but using an LFO to control all these parameters, maybe in different LFO settings, different values. And this way bring even more life and also a little bit of randomness and chaos to your sounds, which I think always makes a sound unique. You have at the one hand a little bit of chaos and a little bit of randomness, and then you have a melody or something that basically has a little bit of consistency and that doesn't change. And these two things together for me create really interesting sounds. So yeah, to sum it up, either tweaking sounds with your hands or using LFOs is a great technique to bring ARPs to life. Now, tip number 4 is to create interesting ARP melodies with the melodies that you create itself. So this is not about like the sound shape, but rather what kind of melodies you use for your ARPs. And there, of course, you can just use a simple arpeggiator with an upgoing ARP and then just play a minor or major chord, but this will over time be quite boring. So what I did here in this example, I have 2 chords. I think it's a C minor and an F minor that are always changing, and then also you can hear sometimes there are some higher notes in between, and this is because there's some randomness to the octaves that are playing, and yeah, also some other parameters I changed here. I also don't have the ARP playing all the time. There are in the ARP sequences some steps left out, and yeah, this way I tried to make this melody a little bit more interesting and unique. I, by the way, also have a complete video on how to create interesting ARPs on the Digitone, which you can find somewhere here. And yeah, there I go into these techniques in a little bit more depth on the Digitone. Also there it goes, you can apply these techniques to any arpeggiator, also the ones in Ableton or on other synthesizers. But yeah, it might give you some good ideas on how to approach your ARPs. And tip number 5 is to have the right use of reverb and delay to make the sounds more interesting. I find that is a very nice way to fill up the little spaces in your ARPs. You can, for example, here in this example, if I make it very short, here you can hear the reverb and the delay quite nicely. And the way I set it up is actually with the reverb, I take some care of that the decay time is not too long, because otherwise it would get a little bit muddy and the room would be all the time filled with all the sounds you have playing or that are playing in your sequence. And this is something I don't want. So I keep it a little bit shorter, and I don't have the reverb, of course, all the way wet. I use it here in Ableton as a send effect, so I can send some amount of it to the Mother-32, and I think right now it's from the send at around 60%. Same goes for the delay. The delay has also a send of about 60%. And with the delay, I'm always using a ping pong delay, because I really like when you have a mono sound like from the Mother-32 here. I think it's a great idea to fill up the stereo image a little bit. And this is what I use the ping pong delay for, to have some sounds always playing in the right side of the stereo field or in the left side. And yeah, so this is something also to keep in mind when creating ARPs. I think using the right delay times and the right delay reverb settings, sorry, I think this helps a lot when creating some lush arpeggiators. And yeah, that sums up my video on ARPs using the Moog Mother-32. I hope that you found it useful. If you did, like I said, a sub, a like to the video, or a comment always helps. Always happy to hear your thoughts in the comment section here below. And yeah, I'm wishing you a great day. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.